What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots and lots of news to go over here this week, so grab your favorite snack, your favorite beverage, and kick back and enjoy the long weekly update here. So first off, I want to mention I'll be doing my usual weekly live stream like I always do on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Join if you can, it's always a good time hanging out and talking cars with all of you. But the first and biggest surprise this week was the Beijing Auto Show had a few things going on, and a lot of it isn't applicable to us here in the States, so I'm not even going to bother covering most of it. But one of the biggest things is that Mazda has revealed a gorgeous new Mazda 6 there. And there's a few caveats here to this vehicle, which I will get into here, but what I believe we're seeing is what will likely come to the US, and it also has one huge change for the company as well. But first, it actually happened. We have a new Mazda 6. There's rumors and, a lot of just doubts that it would ever happen. Sedans don't sell, yada, yada, yada. And yet, here we go. We have a real sedan. And what we're looking at here is a looker as well. And this isn't just a concept car, by the way. This is, in fact, something that is going to be on sale in China by the end of this year. It's formerly called the EZ-6, but, it's a 6 still, which is awesome. The first caveat here, though, is that China still buys sedans in decent numbers, and the business case, therefore, is stronger there in China than it is here in the States. And, there's been a lot of sedans that have continued to stick around. The Ford Fusion has stuck around in China. Lincoln has a sedan still over there. There's all that kind of stuff as well. So, not a guarantee there, but the way it is with, Mazda, they have global vehicles. We first saw the CX-90 in a slightly different form, with the CX-60, and now there's CX-70, CX-80. They like to spread out everything with like very similar components. So I have a hard time believing that they went to all this trouble making a new Mazda 6 and then they're just going to keep it for China. Again, they could, but if they already did all the work, why not ship it other places, So that's the one reason why I think what we're looking at is actually a new Mazda 6 for the States as well. But there's no word from Mazda officially about any of this. They just say it's being sold in China, and they're not elaborating beyond that for now. So we'll have to see about that. But the other caveat here is that it is co-developed with Changan, which is a Chinese government-owned car company. And so usually for any other car debut, this sinks any chances of it coming to the States. For example, Toyota has a bunch of new debuts this week too at Beijing, but they're all like using a bunch of Chinese tech and stuff, which means they will never come here, unless they're heavily modified. But this has better chances than the average Chinese car, because even though it does, have that tech, Mazda here says that the car combines Mazda's strengths with Changan Automobile's electrified technology, which suggests that they might only be relying on that company for the powertrain and the electrified powertrain components in particular. And so in China, it'll be offered as a full EV and as a plug-in hybrid. And the plug-in hybrid is the big key component here as well, because that means that this platform in this car can accept a gas engine. And so with that possibility, then it stands to reason that you could fit other powertrains in this as well that are gas powered. And even if it doesn't fit the straight 6 motor that we see in the CX-90 and the CX-70, if it's already set up for a plug-in hybrid thing, the plug-in hybrid setup that we see here in America, that we see in the CX-90 and also in the CX-70, is the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine. Doesn't take up a lot of space, a small little engine for the most part, and then the plug-in hybrid stuff. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be able to fit in here. And if you have all the plumbing and stuff set up for a plug-in hybrid anyway, and all that, even if that is our only choice, if they do bring this over to the States, it has to be plug-in hybrid, that's still not a bad choice, because just as a reminder here, that plug-in hybrid does 323 horsepower here in the States. It's almost as fast as the straight 6 version. And whenever I had a CX-90, both a plug-in hybrid version and a straight 6, I actually preferred the plug-in hybrid version. It was more responsive than the straight 6. Obviously, the straight 6 is awesome. I'd love to see that in this car as well. But could actually be an awesome combo still, and that would be really good, especially in this beautiful looking car. Another key piece of info that suggests that what we're looking at is most likely based on the CX-90 platform is the fact they say this is rear-wheel drive, which is a change that outside of the Miata and RX-8 and stuff was ushered in for the first time for the regular passenger vehicles here within Mazda with that CX-90 platform. It was a big investment doing that platform, and again, they already have that platform developed. why would you make a separate new rear-wheel drive platform when you're, again, Mazda, who doesn't have a ton of money to be burning on multiple rear-wheel drive platforms? It makes sense. They would just be using the CX-90 platform here. And, you know, for whatever reason, they decided to go with the Chinese tech for the plug-in hybrid, and the fact that, you know, Mazda probably doesn't have a great EV setup, you know, for a vehicle like this. And so, you know, you bring in that stuff for the EV version, which is pretty much a requirement, you know, to sell in China these days. You know, but then the rest of the world where you don't need the EV version, you know, we just have a plug-in hybrid. No one in America would be upset about not having an electric Mazda. You know, I think that, you know, it seems very likely that what we're looking at here, again, this is why, you know, this isn't just me clickbaiting. I genuinely think this car is coming to the States. And to me, all the components here, all the ingredients are there that make me think that we are looking at a car that is based on the CX-90, is going to use that powertrain, and is going to look like this. And so it's a big deal. So just also other things here is that they said it has 50-50 weight distribution, so they're focusing on handling, making it, you know, a good driving vehicle as well. And then as far as size goes, even though it looks a little bigger than the old Mazda 6, it's pretty close in size. It's only 1 inch longer, 2 inches wider, and 1 inch taller. So really close. It looked a lot longer to me in the pictures here, but, you know, pretty much the same size, which would be a great size still. The other big deal, though, is on the inside, which not only is beautiful looking with ambient lighting and the really nice seats and all that, but Mazda has finally gotten rid of the controller wheel. And they just have a big touchscreen in there instead, which, I mean, looks to be a good size, you know, and we will see if that's a China exclusive thing, but at the very least, this shows that Mazda is loosening up on their idea that the controller is supreme to all. And, you know, I mean, I don't have anything against the controller wheel, especially now that you can do the touch with CarPlay and stuff in all the current Mazdas. It's fine. But, you know, this would be really encouraging to see, you know, for some people that, you know, the controller wheel might be a deal breaker. You don't have that barrier anymore with a Mazda. And I'm honestly really shocked because, I mean, Mazda was very adamant that they, you know, did not want to do a touchscreen. And yet here we are. So that is a huge, huge change. We will see, again, if that, you know, spreads its way through America here, and that's the new kind of interior design we can expect from future Mazdas. But, you know, some really big stuff here with this vehicle, regardless of, again, what's happening with, you know, the stateside prospects. But, so yes, as of right now, nothing is guaranteed outside of those in China getting this new car. But for all the reasons I think you can agree, seems like this is most likely has the right stuff to come to the States. You know, again, maybe the business case is terrible or something, but, you know, all the other stuff is there that makes me think this is coming. So we will see. And the fact it's coming by the end of this year, you know, to China means that for here, I mean, I would assume we'd see this, you know, next year, which would be nice too, to see it nice and quick. And also at the show, Mazda very briefly also showed off the ID.Code Concept, which isn't a production model here, but will inspire a production vehicle, they say, in China in 2025. And from the looks of it, to me, that's like, I mean, obviously it's concept-y, but I think that's kind of what you could envision a next-gen Mazda CX-30 looking like. It kind of has that same kind of evolution of that design language there. I think what we're looking at there is this new CX-30. Whether they call it ID.Code now or CX-30 remains to be seen, but I think that's probably what that's hinting at there. And again, if it's 2025 China, you know, maybe we get it around the same time. Maybe those will be the two big debuts next year, or 2026 for that one. I don't know. But CX-30 is about due for a new generation as well, if we, you know, stick to the usual 5-year kind of cadence there. But anyway, so yeah, but so awesome to see a brand new Mazda sedan, a production Mazda sedan that looks great. It sounds like it's going to be promising here. And has a good chance coming to the States. Fingers crossed, but awesome, awesome stuff there. Also, Nissan has shown off 4 concept cars in Beijing, and these, you know, could preview styling. It's not, you know, these aren't like production cars like the Mazda, so not quite as exciting. But, you know, these are vehicles that, you know, are meant for China, but could also influence, you know, the stuff that we see around the rest of the world here. So I'll start with the most exciting one here, which is called the Evo concept. Nissan is bringing back the Evo instead of Mitsubishi. Now, they are connected. I'm just kidding, but that's wishful thinking. We'll never see a new Mitsubishi Evo. But, you know, they, for some reason, decided to call this one the Evo concept. And anyway, so it could preview what like a new Altima or Maxima could look like. They did confirm that you know, Maxima is coming back as an electric vehicle, essentially. So, you know, whether that would be this or something a little bit bigger and grander remains to be seen. But anyway, surprisingly, this one is a plug-in hybrid, not an EV. And there's no other details beyond that, though. The other sedan, though, is called the Epoch Concept, which is an EV and could preview a Sentra replacement. And the wheels even look like they have an S design into them, which maybe is an intentional hint at Sentra, maybe not, I don't know. There's also the Epic Concept, which is an electric crossover, and the Era Concept, which is a plug-in hybrid. And these could preview a next-gen Rogue, in my opinion, but, we'll have to wait and see. Again, these ones are just concepts and a little more far-fetched. And even production versions of these, if they happen, might just be for China. But considering, the Sentra, Altima, Rogue, those are all approaching the age where, I would be expecting a new generation for those, pretty soon here. It makes sense that they're starting to show off this now, and maybe in a year or two we get, production versions of those. We'll have to wait and see. But, we saw, a few weeks ago, all the shadowy Nissans and the one image of all the new stuff they have coming here, the next few years. And, these could be some of those first ones. We'll have to wait and see. Now, as far as more near-term Nissan debuts that are happening most likely this year, Automotive News talked with their dealer sources that recently returned from a regional meeting where Nissan showed them the new Murano, Armada, and Rock Creek version of the Rogue. And they say the Murano will use an evolved version of the current platform, but throw out the V6 and the CVT, thankfully, for a Turbo 4 and the 9-speed automatic. And will focus on comfort over sportiness, which I think is also the right choice there for that segment. And dealers say it looks similar to an Acura MDX, but also has a Porsche-like rear. Which I think, most others are thinking is just going to be like a light bar in the back like everything else has. It's a safe bet, but maybe there's something else that they're meaning by that. But as far as the Armada, there's no big surprises there. It'll use the QX80's twin-turbo V6, and it's going to have, the same kind of size as the QX80, just, not as nice as the Infiniti, but they say it'll, for a Nissan, be much nicer than the current Armada on the inside, of course. And then as far as the Rock Creek version of the Rogue, it's going to copy the same formula, it sounds like, from the Pathfinder. No big surprise there either. Going to have some off-road tires, a roof rack, slightly more rugged look, and call it a day. So, it should be fine, though, to compete with, the RAV4, TRD off-road, and, things like that. There's no word on exactly when all these are going to arrive. But I think, on the timeline here, it seems like it's, pretty safe bets. We'll see all this stuff this year. And so anyway, interesting to see that. But getting back to the topic of mid-size sedans here, one mid-size sedan that sadly doesn't have any future at all is the Subaru Legacy, with Subaru announcing this week that the 2025 model year will be the last for the Legacy. And Subaru's explanation is that this is because of, although the Legacy is the longest running Subaru model line, its discontinuation reflects market shifts from passenger cars to SUVs and crossovers, and Subaru's transition to electrified and fully electric vehicles. And, sales are clearly the main driver here, because you can't blame it all on the whole sedan thing, because Toyota still manages to sell hundreds of thousands of Camrys. Even Sonatas sell pretty well these days. I think they're almost 100,000 units. Altima sells, decently well. I mean, there are good sales, just that people just don't want Legacies. It's not that the sedans are dead, even though Subaru would like to blame it on that. It's just that their sedan is not competitive, unfortunately. And, so that's kind of them passing the buck there. But, I mean, as far as, regardless of, their own, failures possibly with the Legacy, it's just the fact that they sold 25,000 Legacies compared to 160,000 Outbacks, which is the same vehicle, just a wagon that's, got an extra inch of ground clearance or whatever. But magically, the second you put cladding on the side of it, everyone wants it. And, Subaru invented that segment. They know that. And, I think that at this point, they just are tired of trying to fight to keep the Legacy around when clearly it doesn't seem like it makes sense. And I think this is why you saw Impreza go hatch only for this generation, because it was just basically, okay, we can take a Crosstrek and strip it down and still call it an Impreza. You can't do that with a Legacy unless they only sold a Legacy wagon, which I don't think they would be, be wanting to do. So, doing the two separate body styles, I think they just can't justify anymore. And so that's why they're getting rid of it. I think it also didn't help that, all the new Legacy competitors really probably hurt it. Camry added all-wheel drive, Altima added all-wheel drive. Now I think we have, is Sonata offering all-wheel drive now, or the K5, one or the other, I think is. But, regardless, there's all these new all-wheel drive versions of, again, the more popular sedans out there. Just doesn't leave much for the Legacy there, who, again, everyone just goes and buys the SUVs or crossovers. But So also Subaru restated that they're planning 8 new EVs by 2028, but it sounds like, if they're claiming, oh, no one wants cars anymore, that all 8 are going to be SUVs or crossovers, I guess. And even if they replaced every SUV and crossover in the lineup currently with an electric version, that's only 4 vehicles. They just have Crosstrek, Forester, Outback, and Ascent. It's assumed that the WRX will continue on as an EV, and we heard rumors way back when the STI got killed off that a new STI could come around 2028 that's electric. And so, there's that one, I suppose, but that still leaves them with 3 other non-sedan EVs. They got to try and wedge in between the other gaps, niches in the lineup there where the other main ones reside. So I'm not sure what they're planning on doing with that, or unless this is just them, bluffing and they are going to still have sedans or something. I have no clue, unless they want to add a minivan or a bigger SUV or something. I have no idea. But anyway, I also would add that, prepare for the Impreza to go away as well, because it's the same kind of sales situation with that. With, I think Crosstrek sold like 140,000 units last year or something. Impreza sold like 36,000 or something. So slightly better than Legacy, but, same kind of story there. And again, you have just the one body style now, so that makes it a little easier to justify. And the Impreza just came out, for this new generation here in 2024. So I don't expect it to go away soon, but depending on how sales go here, I wouldn't give it more than a 4 or 5 year run. So, I'd say it definitely will be gone before the end of this decade, if not sooner. Sad to see those legacy names from Subaru, going away here. And it's sad to see it go, though. I owned a 2006 Legacy, and I always thought that it was, an amazing car. I loved it, and I was hoping for them to do better things with the Legacy. And unfortunately, they just watered it down to the point of no one wanting it, essentially. And it's sad to see it go, though. I've always loved the Legacies, and they had some awesome ones over the years too, in Japan and stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna pour out a drink here for the Legacy, even though again, if you do want one, you can get one here until the end of the 2025 model year. So I'm assuming you got another year or so. Or even maybe a little more to get yourself a Legacy if you would like one. I'm hoping to still maybe review, one last one here before they go away. But anyway, gonna pour a drink out here for the Legacy. Cheers to the Legacy on what was, again, the longest run for Subaru for a U.S.-built vehicle. They started building them in 1989. First U.S.-built Subaru, and longest running nameplate that Subaru still has here. So cheers to the Legacy. It was a good run, and I think you deserve better. Moving on here, Ford CEO has teased a new Mustang that's coming next year on X at the end of last week. So there's all the stuff about the 60th anniversary Mustang and the new retro gauges. I covered all that, but I guess at the end of the presentation, a bunch of people, myself included, missed that they teased a new Mustang under this sheet here. So as far as this image, it's titled RTR Fun 03B. So if it is an RTR thing, RTR already has 2 levels already out for the 2024 Mustang that are upgrade packages. I'm hoping this is more than that. If they're teasing it and they're all getting us all excited for it, then it's more than just a dress-up dealer accessory kind of kit. But this one does appear to have a larger wing. We will see. Other people are hoping, for a Boss 302, and I guess if they use the 69 and 70 Boss 302s as inspiration, then you could have an actual pedestal spoiler there on it, which is maybe what we're seeing there. Others are also hoping, maybe for a new GT500, which, that motor, if they want to carry it over, is still in production in the Raptor R. I'm sure they could certainly, ramp up production again for a new Shelby. There's been talks of a new Shelby coming still. I would assume they're going to, continue to do that. Although, again, they have no competition anymore. There's no Hellcats. There's no more Camaro. So, anything we get from Ford these days is a gift, honestly. We'll see, but they have no pressure to do anything anymore. It's all about, I guess, the profit margin if they can justify it. There's no competition to fight against. But anyway, we'll wait and see what happens next year whenever that, new Mustang shows up there. Also, Tesla this week has their own impressive news. They revealed the refreshed Model 3 performance here, and so it gets a new rear motor that not only bumps peak horsepower from 455 horsepower to 510 horsepower now, but also has a 22% increase in continuous power and makes the car more rear biased with the power delivery. This drops the 0 to 60 time from 3.1 seconds to 2.9 seconds now. Top speed is 163 miles per hour. The downside of this boost, though, is that they weren't able to keep the efficiency, with the range dropping from 315 miles down to 296 miles. Although some of that might be due to the sportier Aero, they wanted to differentiate it more visually this time, and I appreciate that. I think it definitely looks a lot better here. And they say that this also reduces lift by 36%, so they're actually going for better aerodynamics here too, which is, interesting that they're taking a more, sincere approach to the actual other components other than straight line performance. And it does look a lot better to me with the performance bumpers as well. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. But other handling improvements are the addition of adaptive dampers for the first time, plus new springs, stabilizer bar, suspension top mounts, and forged wheels on unique Pirelli P04 tires. They've also improved track mode alongside the sport and normal modes that you get with the adaptive dampers now. And beyond the other refreshed Model 3 interior upgrades, this performance trim also gets carbon fiber trim and unique seats with bigger bolsters, but thankfully they do still keep the power, heating, and ventilation functions, and including the full tax credit that this car is eligible for as long as you keep it under 55 grand. With a few options, you can bump it over that, but as long as you don't do the full self-driving and you don't do premium paint and premium interior color, you can keep it under 55. You get the tax credit. And if you do that, then this is going to be starting at $47,130 when you include that tax credit. 47 grand for 2.9 seconds 0 to 60. Unless I'm forgetting something, nobody else can claim a sub 3 seconds 0 to 60 time for under 50 grand. That is, I don't even know if anyone can claim a sub 4 seconds 0 to 60 time for under 50 grand. That is insane. And I've said this for a while, even with the old Model 3 Performance. I'm like, look, if you just want to smoke people at red lights or go to the drag strip and embarrass everyone, get a Model 3 Performance and call it a day. And now it's really hard to argue with at this price point. Because the old Model 3 Performance was I believe they were close to 60 grand, in pre-inflation times. So in post-inflation times, 47 grand is really unbelievable. Plus all the other nice improvements to this thing and stuff. Again, Teslas aren't for everybody, but it's hard to argue with the performance here of this for the money. That is probably the best performance value out there right now, if I'm being completely honest and objective here. But yeah, so anyway, they're available to order now. And yeah, I don't give Tesla very much credit, but I got to take my hat off to them for this. Offering this much performance for under 50 grand is a huge enthusiast win, and very cool to see that. Another very fast car here that debuted this week was the 2025 Mercedes-AMG GT63 SE Performance, which squeezes that very complicated plug-in hybrid combo that has the 2-speed transmission in the back end and the regular 9-speed in the front and all that stuff. It jams all that stuff into this little AMG GT. And so like the others, it uses the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 along with an electric motor to give you 228 horsepower and 457 pound-feet of torque, more than the top AMG GT63, for totals of 805 horsepower and 1,047 pound-feet of torque, running through all 4 wheels. It gives you a 2.7 seconds 0 to 60 time and 199 mile per hour top speed. But we don't have pricing for these yet, but it's almost certainly going to be over $200,000, and you only do a 0.2 second faster 0 to 60 than the Model 3 Performance for under 50 grand. That's the league that thing is playing in. And this Mercedes with all this complication, all this wild stuff, it's only 0.2 second faster. It's wild that Tesla can do. But anyway, getting back to the Mercedes here, it runs a tiny 6.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack, so don't expect any kind of real range. It's just there for performance and classification purposes, essentially. Otherwise, it includes all the top stuff from the regular 63 version to help with the handling, which will almost certainly be worse due to the big weight gain, although Mercedes didn't give an exact weight for the car yet. But it'll begin deliveries in the US starting in late 2024. The even bigger electrified Mercedes news that came out here this week was the debut of the electric G-Wagon, which is officially called the 2025 Mercedes-Benz G580 with EQ technology. Mercedes loves their long names. Anyway, as you can see, it basically just swaps an electric powertrain into the current G-Wagon here, with the main styling difference being just the grille, although the drag coefficient is slightly lower thanks to a few subtle aero tweaks as well. The suspension is the same as well, retaining independent front and a solid live axle rear, which is surprising for an EV. It has 4 electric motors, but surprisingly they only add up to 579 horsepower here, although torque is closer to expectations at 859 pound-feet. But I'm assuming they're just holding it back with the programming until the AMG version arrives, because, I mean, those motors are very underperforming. They're 4 motors. I mean, they're barely doing like over 100 horsepower each to get 579 horsepower. But anyway, it'll still do a plenty fast 4.6 seconds 0 to 60, and should sound fast inside as well, with the addition of what they call the G-Roar. Which they say includes deep bass and sonorous tones, and has different settings and can be turned off as well if fake sounds aren't your cup of tea. But they call it the G-Roar. I mean, G-Wagons do roar with those side pipes. I mean, it's no joke. I've reviewed a couple of them. It's hilarious. Yeah, and they also say this is the first mass-produced vehicle from Mercedes with individual wheel drive. Which sounds like a very Mercedes thing to say, individual wheel drive. But anyway, it enables fun stuff like the G-turn, which on loose surfaces will allow you to spin around in place, but only twice before it stops you. I'm guessing it's just they don't want to have too much wear and tear on those motors and stuff. There also appears to be no downgrade in off-road capability either, and actually slightly more in some ways. It has a low range, but doesn't have the traditional front, center, and rear lockers for the diffs, but they're not needed because with the 4 individual motors, which provide virtual differential locks, according to Mercedes. It gives you infinite adjustability and gives you the best of all the worlds. But because for some reason they gave it an extra 0.3 inches of ground clearance, that means that the approach and departure angles are both up by about 1 degree, and it somehow can even wade 6 inches deeper through water, which seems like a brave thing to do with the battery pack and all that. But that's all been very well protected. They say the battery pack is protected by an inch-thick skid plate that uses an intelligent material mix that includes carbon, but it still weighs 127 pounds. They say that a steel skid plate would be 3 times heavier, which is why they didn't do that. But first off, when you're talking about a Mercedes battery pack, I'm okay going for the extra weight there of steel skid plates. I think would have been the better choice. Also, this thing still weighs 7,716 pounds. So you want to triple the weight on the skid plate there, make it a nice even 8,000 pounds. Like, what's the difference between 77 and 8,000? At least here in the States, there's no difference, I don't think. So, it's going to be heavy either way. And speaking of the battery, though, it's a huge 116 kilowatt pack that's only rated for 294 miles on the easier WLTP test cycle. So expect something in the mid 200s. When the EPA rates it here. So, I mean, we're talking, like Hummer levels of efficiency out of this thing, which, I mean, it's cool, but there's no reason to think that this is actually economical in any way. It charges at a pretty quick 200 kilowatts at least, and so that should help. And there's no pricing or release date yet, but being a 2025 model year, it means it should arrive at some point this year or early next year. But anyway, cool to see that nonetheless. Range Rover has also partially revealed their electric Range Rover, showing the car without any camo, while it does some cold weather testing here in Sweden. And there's not much info about it still beyond them promising V8 levels of performance, which, is basically a given with electric motors of any sort, along with them saying that it'll have software that allows each motor to handle its own traction control, which provides much quicker response times than the usual systems that have to communicate with the vehicle's main computer first. I think this is something that BMW has also cracked with the M cars. Maybe, since BMW's been kind of sharing stuff with Range Rover, this Range Rover's these other Range Rovers are using, twin turbo V8s from BMW and stuff. It could be that maybe Land Rover was able to get BMW to give this tech up, to their engineers as well. I don't know. But, that's a cool advancement. There's no info on exactly when these are going to come, but judging by this, the state of this, prototype or whatever, it looks production ready, and they're in this late stage, cold weather testing and stuff. I would assume that it'll debut at some point this year, but we'll have to wait and see. Interesting though to see that. In some other JLR news, Defender, which is now its own brand, teased the Defender Octa, which is a more hardcore off-road version of the Defender that's debuting on July 3rd. It'll have a twin turbo V8 V8 and the 6D Dynamics suspension that's seen in the new Range Rover Sport SV. And in addition to testing it in Dubai and Moab, they are also focusing on-road performance and amazingly even tested it at the Nürburgring. So, you know, I mean, I guess they are still worried about on-road performance as well, which is interesting. It's going to be trying to do everything, I suppose. And it appears to get more aggressive styling as well. In addition to, you know, having a twin-turbo V8 and stuff should be really fun. And so, yeah, very interesting to see that, and we'll stay tuned for that in July. Lamborghini has revealed the refreshed Urus this week, seemingly adopting Toyota's naming scheme, calling this one the Urus SE. So anyway, it's the promised plug-in hybrid version of the Urus, and the only way the Urus comes now. There is no non-plug-in hybrid Urus anymore. So it's no downgrade though. It still runs the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that is always run here, and it still does 611 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque on its own. But it's now electrified thanks to the same tech we've seen in the Porsche Cayenne Turbo E Hybrid, meaning an electric motor built into the 8-speed automatic. Although here it appropriately one-ups the Cayenne, doing 788 horsepower total and 699 pound-feet of torque, which is 59 more horsepower than that Porsche. It'll do a 3.4 seconds 0 to 62 mile per hour time, which means it's losing to the Model 3 Performance for under 50 grand. Sorry, it's just not going to get old to compare anything to that car. Also, this thing is 194 mile per hour top speed. And since it runs a pretty big 25.9 kilowatt hour battery, it can actually do 37 miles of electric driving too, which is actually pretty good. And the performance penalty is extra weight, of course, and Lamborghini hasn't revealed the new curb weight, but they say it has a better power-weight ratio than the old car, and there's a new torque vectoring system that can provide on-demand oversteering, they say, which is always sounds like a good time. The styling changes also help with cooling and downforce, and you can see that along with the new bumpers there's new headlights and a new hood that comes all the way down to the grille now. The fake mesh there on the liftgate, they say, is inspired by the Gallardo, which is an interesting touch. And inside it's mostly the same, but the main screen does get an upgrade from the standard Audi display to a larger 12.3-inch screen, but does retain the smaller lower screen there, which might be a preview of what's to come for the next generation of the Audi top models. You know, the RS6 and stuff like that could maybe give the similar type of setup here. And so anyway, there's no pricing or release date yet for these, but it's a 2025 model, and so that means it should be, you know, coming fairly soon, I'm guessing. So interesting to see that. Speaking of the Porsche Cayenne, though, they continue to fill out their lineup here of you're rolling out all these refreshed Cayennes, and this week they revealed the GTS version. So this one does without the hybrid assistance, but continues with the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, and still adds 40 more horsepower and 30 more pound-feet of torque than the old GTS, now doing 493 horsepower and 487 pound-feet of torque, which honestly, I mean, you know, less than 500 horsepower out of a twin-turbo V8 these days, especially for a Porsche, still seems a little underwhelming. But anyway, that's also 19 less horsepower than the Cayenne SE Hybrid, that's lower in the hierarchy. So, you know, it's kind of strange if a hybrid Cayenne S is, you know, not blowing the doors, but is slightly faster than the GTS version. It just seems kind of odd, but this is the age we live in. Electrified is the way to go faster, and yeah, it's very interesting. But anyway, this one still too runs that 8-speed automatic, but Porsche says the shift times are now shorter in sport mode, and the GTS also gets the front axle pivot bearings from the Turbo GT for better turn-in, and that car's all-wheel drive cooling system is also migrated over for better cooling. You'll also be able to get the cool new Porsche Active Ride suspension as an option, and the GTS also differentiates its look over the Cayenne's, you know, regular look with black trim, tinted headlights and taillights, 21-inch RS Spider design wheels, and dark bronze exhaust tips. And inside you'll get the combo of race text and leather on more heavily bolstered seats as well as red stitching. And pricing goes up by about $12,000 for the regular one and $14,000 for the coupe version, with prices now starting at $126,985. And they'll begin arriving around the end of this year. So interesting to see that one. And for the last exotic SUV news here, they all did it all in the same week. Aston Martin has revealed the refreshed DBX 707, and so it's identical on the outside other than the new side mirrors, but on the inside is where it gets a huge improvement, gaining the new components that debuted on the DB12 and the Vantage, meaning it finally ditches the Mercedes controller and finally gets a touchscreen for the first time. That's 10.25 inches, still a little small, but you know, totally fine, along with a new 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster display and lots of buttons that I'm sure feel amazing. The dashboard and the steering wheel are color new as well. And then beyond the interior, it gets a retuned air suspension, likely to be more comfortable since the 707 version is now the only way to get the DBX. There is no regular DBX anymore. They say that's due to a low take rate for the base one, like everyone wanted the 707 version. And so now that's the only one. You would think they would have just dropped the 707 thing, but I guess they didn't want to lose out on that appeal, so they're still calling it DBX 707, even though that's the only version. But anyway, there's also new paint colors and wheel finishes, and there's no updated pricing for these yet, but production and deliveries are both starting this quarter, so like now is when we should start expecting to see these out in the wild. So coming very quickly, and a really nice, much-needed improvement for the DBX, which I always liked, but it's always like, yeah, but you have to deal with old Mercedes tech on the inside. Now you don't have that compromise. You have a beautiful new interior. No reason to not, go for a DBX over an Urus or something like that now. So anyway, very cool to see that. BMW has revealed the refreshed 2025 4 Series Gran Coupe and i4 this week, and they get the same new headlights, taillights, and interior as the 2 Series, or the two-door 4 Series, excuse me, and that we previously saw not too long ago. So I'm not going to waste your time with going over all the details of it again once again, but it's the same powertrain improvements as well, where you get the 48-volt mild hybrid tech on everything now. That doesn't boost power in the base Turbo 4, but does give you 4 more horsepower in the inline 6 version. And there's no mention of mechanical details for the i4 version, which I'm assuming means that carries over unchanged. And there's no pricing for these yet, but production starts for those in July. Mini has debuted the production version of the Aceman at the Beijing Auto Show here, and while it seems fairly likely to come to the US, Mini says that it hasn't been confirmed for the US yet, and there's a good reason for it, which I'll get to in a minute. But it replaces the Clubman in the lineup, and it's all electric. It borrows a lot of styling from the concept, which is cool. I think it looks pretty interesting there, and borrows most of its powertrain from the electric Cooper. This means low power and low range, unfortunately. The base E version has a front motor that does 184 horsepower and 214 pound-feet of torque in a leisurely 7.9 seconds 0 to 60 time. It runs a 42.5 kilowatt-hour battery, about 2 bigger than the base Cooper, interestingly, but still only does a 192-mile range rating on the easier WLTP test cycle, meaning probably like 150 miles here if the EPA does end up testing it. It also only charges its speeds of 75 kilowatts, so that's pretty much the lowest out there, I think, these days. The SE trim gets 218 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque for a slightly better 7.1 seconds 0 to 60 time, and gets a bigger 54.2 kilowatt-hour battery that does 252 miles of WLTP miles there, and slightly faster 95 kilowatt charging. But again, still nothing to get excited about there as far as the charge rates. In the Cooper, the quoted times were around 30 minutes for a 10% to 80% charge, and while a small amount of people might tolerate that for a city car, I feel like that would be a harder sell here in America for the Aceman, if that's going to try and be like a slightly upmarket, cross-track kind of size thing. I feel like they're going to have to do better than, what you're getting in a Cooper. But anyway, it still is fairly small. It's about 14 inches shorter than the new Countryman. And inside it also is basically the same as the Cooper up front, just having a larger back seat there, of course. But still, a very cool interior. I love that new Mini interior. And that's all we know for now, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what Mini decides to do here for the US, but interesting to see that. Genesis has also showed off a new Magma model in Beijing. This is the G80 EV Magma concept, and this one, is kind of similar to the one, pretty close in styling to the one we saw in New York. The new one in New York was gas-powered, though, and that one was strangely only for the Middle East, even though it was debuting in New York. And now this one is only a concept and could only, be for the Chinese market if they're showing it off in Beijing. I'm assuming that means there's a reason for that, but it's just a concept for now. We'll see. It seems like Genesis doesn't want to give us a US version, but I mean, since we are getting the GV60, Magma, they've, said we're going to be getting that one. So maybe if they're keen on just doing EVs for the Magmas here in the States, then maybe this one will actually come. We'll have to see. This one debuts this new Acme blue color and also the blocked off grille. But otherwise, it appears to be pretty much the same as that gas-powered car. And we'll have to wait and see if we do get that one here, but interesting to see nonetheless. us. Yet another Beijing debut that may or may not affect us here in the United States is this Volkswagen ID.Code Concept, which shows off the future of Volkswagen design language, at least for China. And so whether that spreads to the rest of the world remains to be seen, but it's an interesting kind of design though. And while the interior does have some concept elements, this could be a nice departure from the current Volkswagen interiors, and I really like it. There's no powertrain info, but it appears to be an EV. Not that that matters, again, in a concept anyway. We'll have to wait and see, for this one as well and see how that plays out. And for the last news story here this week, Kia has teased the Tasman name. Last week we just saw the name that was teased, and now this week they're showing us a whole lot more. And again, following up on last week, there's no guarantee this Tasman's coming to the U.S. either. It sounds like it's a legitimate body-on-frame truck, not something based on the Santa Cruz. Especially now this week we see the whole truck here, and even though it has a bold camo wrap, that is not hiding the boxy, big nature of this thing. And it looks pretty awesome, though. Kia continues to say, though, it's only going to be available, at least right now, in Korea, Australia, Africa, and the Middle East. They haven't committed to other countries. I don't think they've actually excluded other countries yet either. So we'll just have to, again, wait and see how this one develops. But if it is truly a body-on-frame thing, or any kind of truck for that matter, they got to find a way to build it in the States if they want to get around the chicken tax. It'd be easier if it's, again, based on, the Santa Cruz, and therefore they could build alongside the Sportage or something. But if this is going to be a legit truck, they'd have to find some place to build it if they actually want to bring it over here. So I wouldn't hold your breath for that. It's the reason why we don't get a lot of cool trucks the rest of the world gets. But, we'll have to wait and see. But, seems very promising, though, nonetheless. And, yeah, cool that they're showing off a little more of that. There's no info on when we'll get a full reveal, but it shouldn't be too far away, I'm guessing. And then lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have 3 new members that were able to join this week, 1 on their own, and 2 thanks to the very generous gifting that was done by Kyle and the Truck and Car Guy in last week's live stream. So huge thanks to both of you again for your continued support of the channel. I very much appreciate it. I'm sure all those members that can join and rejoin every week very much appreciate it as well. So thanks to both of you especially. But I also want to give a big thanks and welcome to Stratus Edge 2K7 for becoming a member on their own. I really appreciate your support as well. And I also want to give a big welcome here to the new members Noah and Shane Lockett. I hope you all are enjoying the membership perks so far. And for anyone else that would like to join, become a member, and get those membership perks like that party answering in the live stream. And soon we'll also include a private Discord server. Another cool new perk. Thanks to another member who's helping me out with that. Give a huge thank you to them. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that as well. Another great reason to, sign up and become a member, support the channel, and also get some of those cool perks, as well as, again, that great chatting we get to do every Sunday night there. But anyway, if you'd like to join, there's always join buttons here on the video page, the channel page, and a link in the description. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.